I am by no means a brave man. I won't lie and say I couldn't have stopped this from happening if I tried, if I had just handled everything like I knew I should have. But I didn't, and I paid for it. The TV was filling my apartment with white noise as I tried to study, but I couldn't focus. Only a few hours before, I sent my girlfriend of 4 years a text message explaining my desire to break up. A fucking text message. I'm a sleazeball asshole, I know, but she had begun to scare me over the past few months. It wasn't major things at first, just a strange, unsettling turn in conversation. I could laugh it off, then. I convinced myself she had just a strange sense of humor, but after a while, it escalated to weirder and weirder things. She would command me to slap her and pretend to rape her during sex, calling me a bad lover if I refused. Occasionally, she would make me late to work by hiding my car keys until I roleplayed violently with her. When I talked to her about it, she just told me that real men were dominant with their women, and that I should be grateful to have such a willing girlfriend. I felt justified in breaking up with her, although my methods were misguided. In any case, I received a call as I expected, and it was Vicky. She spoke before I could even say hello. Why? It was a demand more than a question. It sounded as though she had been crying. It's a long story that you won't like, I said, hoping to discourage her from pursuing the issue. I secretly wished she would just hate me and ignore me forever. How long have you known? The sadness in her voice vanished instantly, leaving a cold, clinical tone behind. What? I asked earnestly. That we weren't meant for each other? Don't play fucking dumb with me, David, she hissed. Who did you see? Greg? I was sloppy with him. You had sex with Greg? I asked feebly, feeling the blood throbbing in my ears. He was a mutual friend of ours. Oh my god, you actually don't know. She seemed on the verge of laughter. I knew you were a dunce of a boy, but come on. Nobody can keep a secret like that forever. I had never heard her voice sound like this. Confident, slick, like a cat in a world of mice. I should have ended this so long ago. I tried to find some memory to disprove the suspicions, but I couldn't. I love you, David. She must have thought she sounded sweet, but her voice was positively overflowing with crazy. Please, don't leave me. I could turn you into the police, you know, I threatened. Sexual harassment charges. Do it, and I fucking kill you. Any doubt I had of guilt vanished. I felt my insides turn to ice at her words. Do you understand what I'm fucking telling you, David? I will fucking kill you, along with everyone you love. Answer me. I yelled out loud and hung up the phone hastily. I checked all the windows and doors to make sure they were sealed and locked. Then I remembered that Vicky was back in my hometown 3 states away. Better safe than sorry, I supposed. Of course, being the jackass I was, I didn't think to contact any of my loved ones to warn them. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, I got another call. To my relief, it was my mother. Hello? David, whatever is happening between you and Vicky, you can work it out together. She sounded strained, like she was flexing her abs the whole time she was speaking. Mom, how do you know about me and Vicky? Please call her right now and make up with her. She's a sweet girl, and you deserve each other. I still couldn't quite place what was wrong with my mom's voice, but something was definitely wrong. What's going on? Did she contact you? I asked. I bet she would even do anal if you got back together. My mom started weeping openly. Suddenly, I understood. She was reading from cue cards. "David, please." "Vicky, if you're there, don't you dare touch my mother," I shouted. There was the sound of a phone changing hands. "Listen to your mother. I love you, David. I love you. Please." I put the phone on speaker and tiptoed over to my junk drawer where there were a few old brick phones. I kept testing each of them to see if they had any battery power left. Even without a service contract, they would still be able to dial 911. "David, please, speak to me," she cued, insanely lacing her every word. "Don't make me do it, David. She fears death." Then she hung up. I don't really know what to do now. I've tried calling the police a few times, but for some reason, none of my phones are working. I'm terrified to leave my apartment, even though I know Vicky is hundreds of miles away. I'm considering driving home tonight. She was my mom. Okay, so this all happened about 3 years ago or so. I was around 17 years old. I'm not going to dramatize anything, but let me go ahead and say that I think personally that this is a pretty bizarre story. There are some details about my actual relationship I'm going to leave out. I kind of want an answer to this story/question, but I don't think I'll ever get one. I've been wanting to get some outside opinions on it aside from friends and family too. So, here it goes. My ex, Mary, and I lived about an hour away from each other. We met at a park out of state and ended up living kinda close. We hit it off and dated a month after we met. Our entire relationship lasted a year. She was my first girlfriend. From the very beginning of the relationship, she would discuss her best friend named Patrick. He was in his late 20s. She, as a reminder, was 17 and worked in a bookstore. He lived in her town and she had known him since she was 13. From very early on, I thought the stories she would tell me about him were outlandish. She would talk about watching him get into bar fights with a guy that went by Hammer, how once they pretended to rob a gas station but left the money behind on the counter and had to jump off a roof to escape security, in which Patrick broke his ankle. Another time, Patrick got a brand new Mustang that they wanted to crash into a lake, so they jumped out at the last second. She told me that one toward the end of our relationship, at which point I was completely skeptical of everything she said. You get the idea. The stories she told seemed clearly exaggerated or downright fake. Part of me thought she was just trying to impress me for whatever reason. Here's some other important facts about her. Mary was an artist. She drew all the time in her journal. She rarely drew people as they actually were. She drew people as monsters or animals. For example, she always drew me as a giraffe. She was good at it though. Patrick's last name, according to her, was pronounced and spelled a certain way. Willington. Patrick Willington. Patrick's dad owned a successful company out of state that Patrick would inherit. Mary had a much older brother who was in his late 20s as well, that had joined the military and moved to Korea. She only saw him every few years or so. Mary would tell me that Patrick was very protective of her. She would tell him about me and he would always be unsure of what he thought. She said he wanted to beat me up sometimes and that he'd hurt me if I hurt her. If she told him about something silly I did, he'd think I was an idiot and call me stupid. He also thought I was gay. This is all, of course, secondhand information. Never once in the entire relationship do I think I spoke to him. I'll get to that later. I'd like to also remind everyone that this was my first relationship. I was very insecure, very confused, and there was more going on in it that complicated some things. I did not have the best rationality, as you may have already deduced from how weird some of this sounds. The thing is, I really didn't have any reason not to believe her, you know? She had no reason to lie about any of this, but I was still skeptical. Sometimes Mary would go to Patrick's house really late at night. She said she'd sleep on his couch and that he would literally throw her out of the house in the morning. Sometimes, she said she had to sneak out of her house to go to his. He lived within walking distance, apparently. One time, later in the relationship, Patrick invited her on an out-of-state trip back to his hometown. They were going to stay in a mountain cabin for a week. I was not happy about that. I was more upset when she said she wouldn't tell her parents and that they'd leave on a bus in the morning. Now, at this point in the relationship, I was very unsure of what exactly was going on with this Patrick person. But Mary said that if I told her parents about this trip, that she wouldn't be able to go, and that Patrick would hate me and she'd be pissed. It was more important to her because Patrick apparently would be forced to move away soon to work at his dad's company, and she said she'd never see him again, so she needed to go. Well, when the day came for her to leave, also, I did discuss this with friends and family at the time. Patrick never showed up to get her or whatever. She was very upset, even though he'd be back in town one more time. On another tidbit, Mary's parents never once mentioned Patrick. Ever. She never brought him up around them either. The only time she mentioned Patrick to anyone else was to my dad once, after we broke up. She told my dad one of the outlandish stories I mentioned. Why she met my dad after we broke up is for a different, unrelated reason that I really don't feel the need to add to this story. My dad was flabbergasted, basically. I had told him about all this, but hearing it in person was crazy. Patrick was to have a birthday party once, before the mountain cabin trip thing happened. I was invited. It was going to be at his house starting at midnight. I said I couldn't go to that, but that I'd get him a present. I got him some toolkit things she said he'd like, and I gave it to her for him. She said she brought it and that he did in fact like it. She said the party lasted until 6 a.m. Patrick sent me a text from her phone once when she was with him. It was standard behavior from him. He said I was a pansy or something and that he'd beat me up. That was early on. I'm sorry things are a little out of order. I'm just kind of saying them as I remember. Now, here's where I think things get very interesting. Mary lived near an elementary school. She walked with me there and said his house was close to it. So, she leads me to the back of the school where there is woodland. She brings me to the edge of the woods and has me look in. I see this very old wooden tin house sort of structure. It has broken windows. It's filthy and it's falling apart. The path to it is covered by bushes and trees. She said that was his house. Oh, and at this point, he had moved to work at the company out of state. I asked if she was joking. She said no, and that he wasn't very tidy even when he lived there. I thought briefly that maybe the house was just weird looking on the outside, but actually good inside. But there's no way it was. It was abandoned. Anyways, the same day, she asked if I wanted to go inside. It was hot, getting dark, no one knew exactly where we were, and I didn't want to get cut up by bushes or go in the sketchy house. So I said maybe another time. She insisted, saying that Patrick wanted us to check on things, but eventually gave up. This was very close to the end of our relationship. I asked her a few more questions like, you went through those bushes and stuff every time you went to see him? And she said yes, but they had overgrown since he left. I also asked how he drove out of his house, how anyone visited him otherwise, how he got mail. She eventually realized that maybe I didn't exactly believe her and got mad. I said I was sorry and that it was just different to me. She insisted it was true. I let it go. Well, we ended up breaking up shortly after, but I had a hard time coping with the breakup and ended up speaking with her again later. She was on a bus with her class to go on some trip. Well, I lost connection with her and called back. A young man answered. I asked who it was. He said Patrick Willingson, not Willington. So I opened with a question about his last name and why he had her phone. He said that was always his last name. He said he was on his office phone. I kept asking him questions about himself that only the real Patrick would know. I heard noises in the background. He would pause for a minute before answering. I think she handed the phone to a classmate and told him what to say. Frankly, that's the only real answer to that. Well, he hung up, and I called her back. Mary answered and said that Patrick told her I somehow got connected to his phone, since he was in her recent contacts or something. Clearly bullshit, but I played along, asking one more time about the last name, to which she had no idea what I was talking about, saying it was always Willingson. And left it at that. Oh, and he wanted to beat me up, of course, badly, for breaking her heart. Well, I kept speaking to her for a week or two, and we both finally got closure about the relationship, but as I was recounting this experience with a friend, I realized something. Probably just a creepy coincidence, but I had said Mary was an artist, and that she always drew people as other things. Well, I saw many drawings of Patrick. She said he always wore this dark coat and ripped pants or something. She, as usual, didn't draw him as a human. She drew him as a skeleton. It really creeped me out for whatever reason when I remember that. I may be forgetting some other weird things that happened, but that's the main stuff. Now, to tie it all together, here's some stuff I've done about it since. I tried using Google Earth to look where the house was, since I remember exactly where she showed me. The trees are too thick to see in, and there is construction nearby, so it may not even be there anymore. I've not gone back in person since it is so far away and also close to her house. I have Googled and researched Patrick's name, both names, and anything I could remember. No useful results. She used to mention him on social media sometimes. A friend of mine, who had trouble grasping all of this, found her profile and saw him mentioned, recently too. I have a few theories. Maybe Patrick was just an imaginary friend or character she made to fill the place of her much older brother who moved away and she didn't see often. Her brother and Patrick were the same age after all, and kinda had similar personalities. I met her brother once. Theory number 2. It was all bullshit, and she made it up for whatever reason, to impress me sometimes, to coerce me other times. Theory number 3. It was part of a much greater disorder, which is possible. Mary had other issues that I will not disclose, so it isn't impossible. My last theory. Patrick did exist in some way, shape, or form, but she highly exaggerated him and rarely saw him, so she told me whatever she wanted about him. Kinda fits with the brother theory. It may not be as creepy to all of you since you're on the outside of my social circle, but like I said, that's why I'm posting. But to me, personally, I am bothered by this. Mary had a tendency to be very violent and say threatening things. Why did she make it all up? Why did she show me the house and say it was his? What was in the house? Regardless of if anyone lived there, did she ever actually go in like she said she did? Did she sleep there sometimes or visit late at night like she said? If so, what in the world was she doing? Did someone really somehow live there? Although I kinda highly doubt that one. Why did he have such strong feelings about me? Why did she change his last name? Why did she do that weird thing with the phone and classmate? How many of her other loved ones know about this? What would have happened if I went in that house with her? It was, as I brushed over, during the end stages of our relationship, which were very unhealthy and bent. Some of this is probably heightened by my anxiety. But I do think it's a weird story, nonetheless. I sat in my room, alone and a little sleepy. It was about 1 a.m. and snowing outside. I sat there playing the recently released BioShock Infinite. I had no light on in my room. I enjoyed playing in the dark. It makes me feel as if I'm actually in the game. Anyway, I was sitting up in my bed, resting against the headboard. My room was about 20 by 18 feet and had my bed, a nightstand, a 32-inch flat-screen TV, a dresser, and a closet. My room had 2 windows on either side of the bed, but I had blackout shades on them so I could sleep better. My nightstand was to the right of the bed and the TV was directly across from my bed on top of the dresser. To the left of the dresser was the closet, and to the right of the dresser was the door. I was living the life. I was in my mid-20s, a bachelor, and an apartment all to myself. The only other person that shares the apartment with me is my pit bull, Butch. He looks frightening from afar, but he could never hurt a fly. His name doesn't really suit him too well, but alas, he's a loyal dog. His dog bed was to the left of my bed and it faced the door. He laid there in a deep sleep and he was snoring. His snoring was like the sound of a train going right through my bedroom. I have contemplated kicking him out and making him sleep in the living room more than once. He suddenly awoke and sat straight up. He started barking, and that was when I could hear the sound of someone at the front door. It seemed like they were trying to break in. I rushed into the hallway and then into the living room. The doorknob was shaking violently. I slowly approached the door and looked through the peephole. It was my crazy ex-girlfriend. Jane was the type of girl who would become attached to anything or anyone that paid attention to her. She grew up with no father, as he left when she was young. So she naturally attaches more to males. She looks for someone who could fit that father role, or a man who can care for her. She had long blonde hair that went down to her big breasts. She had a kind face, with nice blue eyes. She had a fit body and was about 5'6". She was the type of girl who would always wear yoga pants and a tank top. I never complained. A girlfriend who wore yoga pants every day is some guy's dream come true. But where she excelled in beauty, she lacked in being healthy mentally. She would always act like a child and hold on to your hand everywhere, even when we were alone. She would laugh at everything I said. That got super annoying. She would also ask to marry me every single day since we started dating. She was crazy. These visits are pretty often since the day we broke up. The day we broke up, she told me that she would never find someone else. I had to change the locks because she kept the keys and would walk into my room and watch me sleep at night. This visit was strange though because she would always come around dinner time since I changed the locks. It was 1 a.m. What the hell was she doing? I made the mistake of grabbing the doorknob. She then stopped trying to get in and yelled, "KC, I know you're in there. Open up." Shit. Now what was I supposed to do? I unlocked the 3 locks I had on the door and opened it. She stood there smiling. "Hey, honey." She strutted right in like she owned the place and sat down on the couch in my living room. "So, what's my love up to tonight?" she asked. Just playing BioShock." "Why are you here?" Something was off about her tonight. She wasn't wearing her normal yoga pants and a tank top. She was wearing gray jeans and a black sweatshirt. "I'm here to see you, my love," she said, smiling. I hate when she called me her love. I had made the mistake of saying I love you about 2 weeks before we broke up. I then spoke up. No, seriously, why are you here? She suddenly stopped smiling and looked angry. I'm here to make you love me and marry me. I suddenly had a bolt of rage flow through me. What? You know that will never happen. I will never love you. I screamed at her. That cut deep into Jane. She sunk down into the couch. She then got up and pouted as she was walking towards my kitchen. Where do you think you're going? I'm going to grab something to eat. I decided to follow her into the kitchen. I did not trust her. As I entered the kitchen, I saw her reach for my set of knives. Jane, what are you doing? She turned around with the butcher knife in her hand. You said you loved me. Why don't you love me? She lunged forward with the knife, just scratching my forearm. I ran out into the living room. I know you're mad, but you don't need to do this, I said. She slowly walked toward me. Her hands were shaking. You said you loved me. You lied. She ran at me, holding up the knife in her right hand. The living room was quite big and open, so when her arm extended towards me, I ran to the left of her. I rushed into my room. Butch had gone back to sleeping. He must have thought the visitor was not dangerous since I opened the door. Boy, was he wrong. I ran into my bedroom, looking for any object to defend myself with. I found a pocket knife that I stored in the drawer of my nightstand, just in case of burglars. Butch awoke and started barking. I turned around to see Jane standing in the doorway. You lied. She kept repeating those 2 words over and over again. I held up the pocket knife in my right hand so she could clearly see it. What do you think you're going to do with that? She laughed wickedly. You're going to love me, even if I have to kill you, she said as she slowly approached me. Her logic made no sense to me. If she loved me so much, why would she kill me? She lunged at me, screaming, You lied! And as she lunged, I struck her in the chest with a pocket knife. I stabbed her right in the heart and she fell to the ground. Laying on the ground, she looked at the wound and then back at me. She slowly whispered, Why? And I looked at her directly in the eye and I said, I never loved you. She then took her last breath and died right next to my bed. A pool of blood sunk into the white carpet beneath her. I dragged her to the closet and stuffed her in it. I closed the door to the closet. I had a lump in my throat. I had just killed someone. How was I going to sleep at night from now on? I turned and walked towards my bed. And that's when I heard the closet door open. I turned around to see Jane standing there. You lied. She then lunged towards me with the butcher knife still in her hand. I woke up sweating and breathing heavily. It was just a dream. I kept telling myself that, trying to calm my nerves. I started breathing normally again, and I looked around to see if it really was a dream. I looked at the carpet on the place Jane used to lay. No blood in sight. I then walked towards the closet and opened the door to find no sight of Jane. I walked toward my bed and settled in. I started to sleep. That's when I heard it. I heard the sound of the front doorknob rattling. About 10 years ago, when I was 14 and had just realized I was a lesbian, a beautiful girl I barely knew asked me out. I was just thrilled to be noticed and have someone want me. So I ignored the fact that I didn't really know her that well, and that she kind of gave off a creepy, cold vibe that was in direct conflict with my spunky and warm attitude. I figured there was no way she would ever hurt me, especially since she was a woman, and I had never heard of a woman abusing another woman. I was ridiculously naive. I know that now. A few weeks into the relationship, she started beating me when she didn't get what she wanted, even sometimes doing so in front of people. No one did a thing. They politely looked away. She started demanding I have sex with her, even physically forcing me to do so, and threatening to kill me if I didn't comply. It took a few months, but my fear of her was finally overridden by a desire to not be the girlfriend of some psychopath, and I dumped her. I told my mother, her parents, the police, and everyone who had been around us what she had done. My ex swore she would kill me. Those were the last words she said to me. My parents believed me. Her parents believed me. The police believed me. But I wound up not pressing charges after realizing how unlikely it was that she would serve time. However, she got all our friends. They all sided with her, and I wound up having to change schools. Soon, we moved to a different city. I got the help I needed, and felt like a changed person. I moved back to the same city where I met my ex when I started college. It's a huge state university with more than 50,000 students, but I figured I'd probably never see her, and knowing her, that it was unlikely she even went there. She was an actress and a singer, and I figured that she had probably gone to a school known for those things. My college was known for science and infamous for having a very underfunded art program. On the very first day, though, I saw her. I felt a cold stare on the back of my neck and turned around, and she was there, 100 feet away from me, staring me down with a blank expression on her face. I glared at her and then sneered, trying to show her I wasn't afraid. And she kept the same cold expression. I turned and walked away at a relaxed pace and tried not to let it ruin my day. But then it started. Everywhere I went, she was 100 feet away. Sometimes, she was with some of her friends, and they would all stare at me with the same blank expression. I never engaged them. I never spoke to any of them. Eventually, they even started following me when I wasn't on campus. It's gotten to the point where I can't enjoy a day at the mall, a date with my girlfriend, a trip to the zoo, or even buy groceries without a dead-eyed girl who beat the shit out of me when I was 14 and her weird crew staring at me. They look like fucking zombies. It's creepy. I even catch other people giving them freaked out looks when they see them. It has been 6 years since she started following me around. I've thought about moving or changing schools, but I know I can't let her ruin my life anymore. It's starting to get creepier and creepier though. Sometimes, someone knocks loudly on my door, and when I go to answer it, there's no one there, but I have this sinking feeling that it's her. Sometimes, random numbers in my area code leave messages of silence for about 30 seconds on my phone, or I get sent text messages from random numbers asking, "Who is this?" I never respond to the texts or voicemails, and immediately block the numbers of the senders. I don't know what to do. I know I'm not cracking up. If I'm ever out with other people, and I think I see her, I ask if they do too, and they always say yes. I want to call the cops. I want to fight back. I want to do something to prove that I'm not a pushover. But really, I just want to put this all behind me. That's all I ever wanted.